Somebody brought my attention to well, it's not a new phenomena, but it seems to be coming back. That there are truthers now who are talking about the pagan New World Order agenda, and they're citing films such as Midsummer, which is like, and claiming that it's pushing this new pagan religion. This is nothing new that we've heard from the truthers. They did this before with Theosophy, that it was the Luciferian agenda and all this kind of thing. This, and then they're saying things. You know, they're obviously pushing a Christian narrative, and then they will, in the same sentence, without a breath of irony, will start attacking Jews and Zionists and all this stuff, when their own religion is the Northern Talmud. The Northern Talmud, that being the King James Bible. Now, I'm not going to go over this again. It's been covered so many times. But and if you're a Christian, you're Jewish. You're following a Jewish guy called Rabbi Yeshuva, who was a failed Second Temple rabbinical prophet, if he existed or whatever he's based on, that was weaponized by the Roman Empire about 300 years later in order to, because it was seen as the perfect religion for the Roman military, and they dovetailed that into Mithraism, and then they created the Christianity that people in Europe and people of European descent think is their spiritual tradition. And that's what has led us to this nonsense you're seeing, where they're talking about New World Order pagans are, they're the greatest danger to the truth and truthers. These are people, like, I make fun of that character on my other channel, Barry Drewmore. He talks about, I'm fighting for my heritage, for my white heritage, and I named my son Ezekiel Yeshuva, this kind of thing. This is the madness and the insanity of it all. These people are at war with their souls, and this is a warning to you lot. You may think they're going, oh, it's all about Baal and creation care, and you're all swallowing and spewing out the same trash that you picked up from, say, I don't know, Jordan Maxwell and other Freemasons that pose as they're Freemasonic types, I should say, that pose as your truth leaders, and they fill you full of nonsense to get you back to the Bible. Ultimately, that's what they want to do. They want to get you back to the Northern Talmud. And I'm not putting down Judaism or the Talmud or the Torah or anything like that. That's your own business. If that's where you're from in that part of the world, I mean, I find passages in the Talmud absolutely hilarious. The stuff where Jesus Christ is boiling in a sea of excrement. I burst out laughing when I first read that, and yeah, it doesn't bother me one bit. And that's just what these Christian truthers who get involved in this stuff, who talk about Talmudic this and Talmudic that, and then go on to quote the King James Bible and talk about, and Jesus, I love the Jesus, I do, I love the Jesus, and what these Christian truthers are, the ones of European descent, they're involved in a 2,000-year-old running dispute taking place within Judaism. They've picked one side of Judaism to support against another, that being Second Temple rabbinical Judaism against that of traditional Orthodox Judaism. And that's all that's about, and that's what they're doing. They're fighting for one side of a Jewish civil war, a Jewish spiritual civil war, by being Christians against another side of an internal Jewish spiritual war, that being the Jews. Now, and the other side would be the Muslims. So either way, you're fighting in a Jewish civil war, in a Jewish internal civil war on a spiritual level. But you see in the Middle East, it's literal as well. And so, if you're a Christian and you're a truther, the first thing you're doing, and if you're of European descent or European, the first thing you have done is you've told the ultimate lie that Jesus is your God, Jehovah is your God and Jesus is your God, and yet your ancestors are not from that part of the world. And you see this Midsummer thing, and these people of like European descent talking about how, well, first of all, Midsummer was a horrible movie. It was like just a shitty breakup movie with the Wicker Man added to it, and it was a shame because the guy's previous movie was fantastic, Hereditary. Midsummer was the most awful, cringe breakup movies, and it didn't even have, like, although both Midsummer and The Wicker Man are basically an attack on paganism, at least The Wicker Man is a very well made and entertaining film starring some very good actors. The acting in Midsummer, you can't wait for them to be sacrificed. It's so awful, and it's a dreadful movie. And yet they seem to have turned it round, these truthers, and they're now thinking that Midsummer is pro-pagan propaganda. What? That's the exact opposite of what it is. The exact opposite of what it is. And it's anti-pagan propaganda, and that's because paganism, real paganism, is actually growing again in Europe, and this is really frightening. You see, let me explain to you, truthers. I know you're not the brightest people in the world, but the first New World Order was Christianity. That was the first. And all others things, attempts to make a one world controlled government, whether it be it Bolshevism, Marxism, the New Age Theosophist thing, all of it initially goes back to your Northern Talmud. All of it. And I'm shocked by some of this. And these videos get enormous views, and they're all full of the usual types going, they're trying to take away my faith. My ancestors came from Europe, and I'm proud to be a Christian, raising my son with names like Yeshiva, Yezukel, Benjamin, this kind of thing, fighting for the European people with his Bible. That's what we're dealing with. This is the kind. You see it with African Americans, unfortunately, as well. I would say that the one group that I would love more than anyone else to return to their pagan roots would be the African Americans. That would be seismic. That would be seismic. And unfortunately, they're all caught up in things like baptism, the Baptist Church, and lots of them are Muslims now as well. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. I was talking to an Irish comic who went on a tour of America, and part of his jokes was to making fun of Jesus, basically on the cross. And he said that the most hostile audiences were African, and he said it was pretty hostile anywhere he did it in America. Jokes that were laughed at and aren't, and we're supposed to be religious here. And he said that the African Americans would like, oh, you went way too far. Then don't make fun of. You see, and then there's also the kind of like the porch truther. And I don't mean that to be disparaging to African Americans, but it's just the term I'm using. They will say, well, I've rejected the Bible, except for the Gospel of St. Thomas, Nagamadi. The Nagamadis, that's the real Jesus. You see, that's still in the game. That's still in the Abrahamic game. Your ancestors are not from that part of the world. So your soul is not from that part of the world. So this whole thing of like, oh, the gospel of St. Thomas is the one I'm following because it's the true Jesus. You're still in the Abrahamic game. You're still in the Talmudic game. That's what's really going on there. And again, I have no problem with anyone being a Christian, a Muslim, or Jew. That's your own business. But don't be telling me Europeans or European, and especially another European or European Americans or Australians or anyone else of European descent, telling me and people like me that we are part of the New World Order agenda, where the only thing that can take down globalization is what? Paganism. Why? Because it emphasizes the tribe. It emphasizes the spiritual tribe. What does a spiritual tribe want from other tribes? Nothing. That way we live in peace, because no one's going to go to war over religion like they do with you have over the last 2,000 years between either jihad or crusade, which your internal war within Judaism and interpretations of rabbinical text. Now that's really that just drives home the absurdity of it, doesn't it? That the reason why we've had all these religious wars, these crusades, these jihads, is all because of an internal conflict within Judaism that has been expanded around the globe to peoples who have no Semitic background, but yet are led to believe that that's somehow their real religion. So those of you true Christian truthers who are on a crusade against paganism, well, you know what you remind me of? You remind me of the Jews who are being marched off the trains at Auschwitz and saying to the SS officers, wait until Mr. Hitler finds out about what you're doing.